Welcome to Simply Sarah. I'm Sarah Stockham, your host, and I'm super excited that you are here. This conversation is going to be about trust. And if you are someone like me who has been looking for what the foundation of that happens to be, you are in for a treat today. Stay tuned because Donna Delarama is going to be with us and sharing an incredible story, but also sharing from her heart things that she's learned in her journey. And as promised, Donna is here with us. And Donna, I'm just so excited because you have such a huge trunk full of energetic tools that you can choose from and that you can pull from. As we go through this conversation, I'm just delighted that you have marked out this time, put it aside just for us to have this conversation, for others to listen in. How did you get to where you are today, friend?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. Well, when you say how did I get where I am, are you talking about anything specific or just where I am presently in my life spiritually is how I hear the question?
Let's go there first. Yes.
Okay. In July 2003, my sister passed away suddenly while I was on vacation. And a very dear friend of mine at the time was driving down from a training session. He was in the Navy at the time and met with me at like 6 o'clock in the morning. Everybody else in my family and my boyfriend at the time was asleep. And he was like, just meet me and we'll go to the beach. And he took me to the beach off of 20 Mile. I forget what the drive is called, but in Carmel. And the sun was just coming up on the horizon. And I remember the rocks just being battered by the ocean and just hearing anger and pain from the ocean.
Yes.
And understanding that that was a reflection of what I was feeling at the time.
Yes.
And my friend was so kind to just allow me to have the space to really just be upset and feel all the feels uncontrollably, but in a really safe way.
Yes.
And that gifted me something that I still take with me today. And that's, just honoring what comes up, even though it's hard and ugly. And that's just one side of it, right? Because the things that can also come up are beautiful and spectacularly amazing and nourishing. They're both nourishing sides of the spectrum.
Yes.
And that's what that introduced me to. And then he eventually introduced me to someone who would become my meditation mentor and teacher. And I haven't looked back.
Yeah. It's so amazing when we have a friend in our life who is willing to allow us to experience life, to allow life to touch us.
Yeah.
And in that place, they hold the space for us.
Yeah.
It is such a remarkable gift, such an energetic gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you were at the ocean, that the waves were mirroring for you the anger that you were feeling, the concern about what the future would look like, all those different pieces that was being mirrored right back to you in your own life. And that through that experience, you were actually able to get to a mentor. I truly believe that when we have a mentor, whether that person's a real life person, they're always real life people, but they're always real people
too, right?
Sometimes they are living, and sometimes we are reading their book and allowing what they had written hundreds of years ago to be really helping us map out our path. And at other times, they're people that we really don't know, but we're listening to consistently to their podcast, or again, reading, or somehow listening in. But having a mentor, somebody who you can actually speak with and share what's taking place in your life and allow that relationship to help configure the next steps, I think is a critical piece for spiritual growth, for emotional growth, even for job growth and for entrepreneurship and those kinds of things as well. Such an important piece. So as you then had this mentor, got this mentor, what were some of the pieces then that you began to look at and to work through? Because you do have a huge, gorgeous chest filled with all of these beautiful energetic tools that you're able to open up that trunk and pull out what you want to use at the point that it suits you to do that. So how did you get to this point that where you are? That was the genesis. How did you get to where you are now?
It's a multi-pronged journey. My teacher has helped me to keep my heart open. And that's been hard. Everybody has had a lot of things that can narrow the doorway and sometimes just take you off your path. But there is a voice that I listen to, and she whispers. It's the truth inside of me that whispers, and sometimes it whispers things that are really hard to hear and really painful to reconcile, because it's often not what I want to do immediately. Like, it really takes me a while to trust, not to trust, because if I didn't trust the voice, I wouldn't allow it to linger for as long as it does, right? So there is a part of me that understands my own wisdom, and the point where I'm at right now is respecting that wisdom and listening to it with reverence. And so it's just, I'm really understanding with clarity how important it is to respect yourself and to honor really small things, like, am I going to choose a burger or am I going to have vegetables? Because later down in an hour, that's going to impact how I feel and how much energy I'm going to have to apply to the next thing that has to get done, whether, that's an email, paying my bills, making the phone calls, doing research, or even just sleeping. And then, something as simple as, do I want to stay up and, just another 45 minutes to watch another episode of this really funny show that's just making me laugh hysterically? Or should I listen to my body and turn it off and go to sleep? And by sleep, like, really disconnect from everything social media and technology.
Yes.
Keep my phone out of the room, covering my alarm clock, like an old school alarm clock that I still have to plug in, with a Post-it note so that I have complete light, like those kinds of decisions. To the decisions of, do I end a friendship of 43 years?
Right.
And so the more I honor the whisper of my deepest truth, the more clarity I have, and I can make the decisions that need to be made. And I don't like the word need, or should, but they have to be made. And feel okay, feel good, feel grounded in that I'm listening and doing the next right thing. Yeah.
I know that trust is a huge piece for you, that learning to trust this quiet whisper that speaks to you, listening to her share wisdom that you may or may not want to fully say, woohoo, celebrate, right?
Yeah.
But yet, I, like you, when hearing that voice, know that it is, for me, the word is prudent for me to listen. Wisdom has shown me that. And so how did you learn this trust dance with this beautiful internal voice?
My meditation practice really began it. But even before, because, I learned to meditate as an adult, but before that, And my father encouraged me to play and to have really crazy imagination, because he was so restrictive on, like, you can't go outside to play. You can't go over to somebody's house. No, you can't ride a bike. And so I had to learn to be my own playmate, I guess, and along with my sisters. And that sense of play, there's a freedom to that, that doesn't have restrictions. And so when you grow up not like with that kind of freedom, it really allows you to be an explorer. And so I've always just wanted to understand deeply, like, how things come to be. You know, it's interesting. I'm looking at a quote that I keep on my desk, and it's and I don't know who wrote it, but it says, self-discipline is the greatest form of self-love. It shows that I care enough about myself to do what's right for me, even when it's hard and I may not want to do it. And I see that every day. And, you know, I've got a long list of, like, I don't really want to do that. That's kind of yucky. That's kind of stinky. That's going to disappoint somebody. But, you know, I think ultimately, if I come to it from a space of love, you know, any decision I make, even though it's painful for me at first, and it may hurt somebody else, or it may leave them feeling misunderstood, I need to reconcile that I understand what I need to do for myself. And that is enough. I can't be responsible. I'm not responsible, nor should I be, for anyone else, unless they were my child. And even then, that has limitations.
Yeah. Donna, I really love that you are so clearly sharing this idea of self-respect, self-discipline, self-love, and how that pushes into relationships. And at the end of the day, being responsible for self and allowing other people to have their own journey. It is, I believe that that's one of the things that so deeply allows people to move into another level of growth, is making that determination that they are important enough to be able to have boundaries, and the boundaries keep in the good and they keep out the bad. And it's not that the other person is necessarily bad. It's just that for that particular moment, whatever it happens to be is not the right thing for you, for me, that particular space and time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, engagement, you know, when we engage, in particular, when we engage with people or circumstances that don't allow us to breathe or grow, and we know that at the moment, and yet we still decide to continue to engage, it breaks us down. And if we continue to do that long enough, we're kind of left feeling like that character in Harry Potter. I don't, you know, if anybody hasn't watched the movie, I'm sorry, but at the very end, one of the main characters is under a bench in the shape of this broken creature. That's what happens to us. And when I saw that scene, I was just like, oh, that will not be me. Or Gollum in Lord of the Rings. Like,
exactly.
You know, I could be that sometimes, absolutely, when I let myself spiral in a way that's not healthy, and I indulge. That's really big for me. It's like, what am I indulging in right now that really I don't need to be doing it just because I can? And someone once asked me, why did you do that? And my answer was, like, adamant, because I can. And then I was like, why is that a problem? And that was a long time for me to reconcile. Like, why is that not okay? Because I can. Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yes.
And it took me a long time to understand, like, to reconcile that. To reconcile that, yeah.
Yes.
There's a lot of power in understanding when not to, how not to, why not to. it takes maturity, and I'm not going to say I'm done with being, a mature person, because I'm not. There's still a long ways for me to go, but I have come a long way, and that I will acknowledge, because that is true.
It is true. I'm just mirroring back for you that I haven't walked life decades with you, but your sense of integrity is something that just continues to show up in all of our conversations. And going back to what you were talking about, when we choose to not honor ourselves, I believe that begins to chip away at our confidence.
Yes.
So then we show up someplace that we're like, oh, I need to show up. I'll use the word mousy. We're just, pulled back and small and can't figure out why. And then there can be this real tussle inside of ourselves of, I've been tough in this place, or I have shown up well in this place, or I've had confidence in this place. And now, for some reason I don't. And why would that possibly be? But when those experiences happen to me, when I look back at what has happened preceding that, I see that I have not been standing my ground, standing firm on taking care of myself. It doesn't mean that I am not willing to bend and watch what's taking place around me. But over weeks and months of not listening internally can really impact that sense of autonomy, the sense of confidence, and the ability to want to move forward on any project. Because I think long term, it then, I'm not a psychologist, but it feels like it moves towards depression as well.
It chips away at you. And then, it chips away at you and breaks you down.
So where does hope fit into all this? You had this great quote earlier that I just love.
Yeah, it's my sister. And I don't know if I should give her 100% credit, but she did have it on her wall for a very long time. And it was a sign that she made for herself when she was planning to do a major shift in her life. And it was, don't hope, plan. And that stays with me all the time. And I have this, I don't know, I kind of don't like the word hope, because it implies that I am lacking faith, which implies I don't trust. And these are things that I'm working on. And I know that there's inherent trust there for a lot of things in my life, for a lot of people, and a lot of, there's just a lot of trust there. And, but I forget that that's paired with faith, right? And so there's that part of me, there's that component of me too, that's like, I don't believe. Wait, how do you not believe? You just you understand the core of something, but you don't believe it to be true for myself necessarily in the moment. And so it really reminds me of a scene in one of the Indiana Jones movies, where I think it's the cup that he was looking for, and he had to pass this cavern, and there was a bridge there, but because everything looked like stone, it wasn't accessible to him. Like, it wasn't accessible for him to visually see it, but he knew it was there. And so what he did was he threw rocks at the path to have it show up, and then he took his step forward. And so throwing the rocks kind of represents, okay, just throw a little faith out there. And then take the leap, or take the leap, or just take the leap.
Yes. I don't want to trigger people. I want just to give a little space here for people who are in a sensitive place with deep loss in their life, or trauma in their life. But having given that, I would love for you to share your experiences more than 20 years ago with experiencing and seeing international tragedy taking place, and you having these tools that you were already beginning to use, and how you navigated through all that, and not just you, but everybody, because everybody that you knew that worked at this particular place was okay at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. You're referring to 9/11
I
and experience. Yeah. I was very blessed to have decided not to take the World Trade Center train that day. It's a train that I almost always took when I was running late, but I had a little bit of time, maybe 20 minutes. And I was like, no, I can take the 33rd Street path. And so I was commuting from New Jersey. You take the World Trade Center in, you take the NR or the E up, and then you can get up and you walk a block. And I decided that morning, no, I have 20 minutes. I can take the 33rd. And so I'm crossing 33rd and Broadway. There was the big Gap store that was there for a long time. And then across was Macy's and then the mall. And I remember looking and just feeling how beautiful and perfect that morning was, and how it was just going to be like, wow, look at the sun. It's shining up on the towers. It's amazing view. This is what I was living for. This is to work in New York City. And like, so I get up to my office and, I'm starting my day, and I get a phone call from a panic manager saying, Donna, there's a hole in the World Trade Center. And I was like, what are you talking about? I was just crossing the street. And she's like, there is a hole in the World Trade Center. And, very clearly panic started to ensue. And I was able to talk to one of the managers at the World Financial Store. And I said, grab the phone list, go to the store at the seaport, make it there. And I, at that moment of telling her that, I wasn't thinking, I couldn't even remember how far or how close the seaport was, but I was just like, get out of that building and walk to the nearest safe place that I could identify. And so that happened. And that afternoon ensued, and we were all watching from 33rd Street, the horror, trying to find a television that we could buy so that we could see the news in real time, and actually watching the towers fall because we were able to get the TV in time when that happened. And praying that everybody that we knew was safe, somehow took a different train like I did. Or, it wasn't just employees. We had friends who worked at the World Financial Center. My friend's father was working there. My best friend's college roommate was in the towers at a restaurant. She just happened to be planning an event there. And so we didn't know any of this until I got home. She was living with me at the time, and she picks up her voicemail, and it's her college roommate leaving her a message saying, I really love you. I'm here. Please know that I love you. And hearing her scream. So having that hit close to home, and then coming to realize that a good friend of mine, her dad, also died in the towers because that's where his office was. And she couldn't reconcile for a long time that the last conversation they had was a fight, and feeling the overwhelming sense of guilt. And for a long time after that day, I refused to cry because I didn't want, there's something in my brain that said, no, if you cry, that doesn't allow, that holds the spirits, their souls on earth. You've got to just let them go. And so I was like, I'm not going to cry. There are so many people that have to get to heaven. And I don't know what Catholic upbringing that came from, but that's what I thought. And I was like, okay, then I'm not going to cry because they're all going to make it up there. Obviously, I cried eventually a lot. And, a lot of horrible things happened that day for so many people around the world. But years later, looking back, beautiful things rose out of that, grew out of it. And there's that balance, and it's really reflective of so much in life, how something horrible can be true and something beautiful can equally exist in the same moment at the same time coming up. And that's, a lot of people that I know say that's the razor's edge, right? You've got to be able to walk through that and understand that you can exist. They can coexist.
Right.
And I think that today, that's happening across the other side of the world.
Yes. Today.
Mm-hmm.
Donna, I'm so amazed hearing this story about you having the forethought or allowing spirit to speak through you to say, grab the phone list. What an amazing thing, because not only did you say it, the other person did it, which meant that it was a printed copy that you could easily grab. So I think that for people who are listening in and considering what are some smart things to do in life, one of those, I think, is to have things actually printed out and have it in such a way that you can actually get a hold of it. How important was that phone list as the days then moved forward?
I think really important. And then also, just as an added note, one of our district managers lived downtown, lived right in the World Financial area, and her daughter and her nanny were missing for a day and a half. And she had no idea what happened to them. And she also had the presence of mind to grab the phone list that they kept on the refrigerator, take the baby, and cross the river into New Jersey, take a ferry, take the ferries that were going to Liberty State Park. And the moment that she was able to get on the phone, called the first person on that list and was like, we're okay. And I have the baby and we are in New Jersey. We are at Liberty State Park. And they were able to exhale. But in that morning, that district manager was she was working as a manager, thinking of all the people who were in her stores being directly impacted by this disaster, this horrible tragedy. And then at the same time, is my daughter okay? Where are they? We can't even go home because it's in the center of this chaos. And I remember her husband meeting her at the office saying, we have to go. Where they were going, I'm not sure, because they couldn't make it downtown. But he was sort of shaken, you need to be a mom. You have that responsibility in front of you right now. That's what we need to do. And so, it turned out okay. It turned out great. Her daughter is beautiful and adult now. And so, if we're going to talk about having things handy or being mindful, one thing that I will suggest outside of a phone list is wherever you're staying, especially if it's at a family or a friend's house, is to have a set of keys.
Yes.
That's super important. I didn't have that when my sister passed, and it wasn't until recently that I've forgiven myself for the guilt of not having a set.
And I think also, as we're talking about just being aware, for us, as we lived in serious earthquake country for decades, we realized that we needed to have somebody who, as cell phones became more popular, and each of us had one, we had somebody who was completely out of state, and all of us had that number, and that was our emergency number, so that we could call into that number to say if we were safe or not. Having somebody who is not in that particular area that can be the person that is kind of the check-in point, right? Say that, hey, or to give information at least. That was a super important piece. And I really appreciate you talking also, Donna, about that space of working through to forgive ourselves for things that we, in hindsight, feel like we should have or could have done differently or handled differently. I also know people who have lost somebody very dear to them. And the last conversation they had was a big row, was a big, huge disagreement.
Mm.
And, the other person's on the other side of the veil, right? And so to be able to see that person and say, hey, this is what I meant, or I said it in words that were particularly painful, finding ways inside of ourselves to be able to nurture that trust that what was said in a moment wasn't a lifetime of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was that particular moment, and that there was this foundation of love and care and respect and family, and not necessarily agreeing all the time,
Right.
but being family, and um, letting not that last moment conversation be the point that so deeply impacts the future that we can't allow ourselves to appreciate things that are going well, and to see the blessings, and to
Mm-hmm.
allow the good to touch our lives as well. Because you're right about that razor edge. It is a very fine area that we live on,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be a personal decision to not want or allow to see the hurt or the feels of loss.
Yeah.
And yet, when I look back at my life, the areas that have been the hardest
Mm.
consistently, Donna, have been the areas that I have grown the most in.
Mm.
Not that I'm asking for hard to touch my life again, but I also am aware that life is not just a monopod. C.S. Lewis in the Narnia, Chronicles of Narnia, that they get on the boat and they get to this place and all they hear is this hopping around, and they finally realize that everybody there is a monopod, right? They only have one foot that they're jumping and hopping around on. And life isn't just joy all the time or just sorrow all the time. Life is filled with all these other pieces that are taking place as well.
Mm-hmm.
So as you have come into this place of not just seeing, experiencing 9/11, up close, very, very personal, and then also within a few years losing your sister, how have you been able to honor those who have transitioned before you?
By keeping them alive, by understanding that they have just left the body. A lot of we're raised to believe that when a person dies, they're gone. And something about my sister's passing helped me to understand that she's just left the body.
Right.
I felt her spirit so strongly for many, many years. In fact, I stopped feeling her for a little bit. And I don't feel her the same way anymore. I stopped feeling her for a little bit, and I was like, well, I don't understand. And then my mother passed at the beginning of the pandemic, and she now resonates for me very much in such a different way than she resonated when she was alive. I feel like she's my friend now, and I could feel guilty about that. About well, why couldn't you be better friends with her when she was alive? But I don't want to. That's not how I choose to see it. It's like this is how we're showing up for each other, because it still very much is a relationship, right? That's where the power of Reiki has been so tremendously helpful.
Yes.
It's a modality that really complements the meditation practice that I have, where both are just, there's a foundation of love and light there. And, that's, for me, I feel that that's the foundation of everything is love. And then that radiates, and then that's where you get the light. And then following that is peace, joy, and, that's what's true. And so, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
How do you honor? How do you?
Oh, honoring them. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. They stay alive. I talked to them. I have conversations with my father-in-law who passed. I have conversations with my mother and my sister, like a lot throughout the day. And I feel what they have to say to me. I don't hear, some people can hear. I'm
Right.
not clairaudient, but I feel. And so my mother and my sister have both guided me to taking action and making decisions, and, not being mad or taking a closer look at something, asking the right question. And it's very much the same kind of relationship that I feel I have with God. It's like I talk to God too.
Yes.
And in moments of real clarity, like unwavering clarity, I understand I am also talking to myself.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
that's a deeper understanding that I'm just growing into.
Yes.
Because there's, we're taught a lot of things that would conflict with that notion. But it's not a notion for me. It's really an understanding of, I am as well.
I am. Yes. Oh, that is so beautiful. It really resonates with me when you talk about how people who have passed, that you can still feel their vibration. You still feel each person has a vibrational energy. And I think that we make up this absolutely amazing celestial choir.
I like that.
And so whether we are in the body form, physical form, where we can touch and feel and see airplanes and hug our fur babies and, celebrate Christmas and those kinds of things, whether it's that or the person has transitioned, I think that this beautiful song of life is just that we're part of the celestial choir. And so my father, who has been gone he died about 13 years ago. There have been multiple times where he was such a great listener for me. And we had been very connected. My mom was pregnant with me when my dad was taken hostage for 10 weeks when we were in Africa. And it was an international event, and the UN came in, and the women and children were taken out of the country. And eventually he was released along with the other men as well. And there had been a pilot of a small mission plane, who had come in to check on them, who had been shot and killed. And so there was this, again, that the two sides of the edge, right? Of the joy of being released and being okay, but yet the deep sorrow that they had buried one of their colleagues and one of my dad's dear friends. And part of our honoring has been walking with that family. Every wedding my parents, everything that has happened inside that family, my parents have been part of at some level, baby showers, all of it. And so there's that piece of holding respect for the people who are living. And yet there's also this beautiful ability to understand that dad is just in a different form. That vibration that was my father, the respect, the person who would listen to me so carefully and not necessarily give me advice on what to do, but in the listening gave me permission to find my voice and find the best step forward for myself in situations. That still is. And I love how you talk about it some level that you understand that that's also part of who you are, the I am, and being in that place as well.
The more I'm going to call it a practice, because it is, right? You practice until it becomes a part of you, becomes who you are. So meditation, there are days when I am so busy that I choose, I'm not going to say I forget, I choose not to go on the mat. But those are the days that I work really with more effort to be very present in what I am doing in the moment. And it's not always easy, because when I carve out that time in the morning and at night to commune with God, that's like kind of how I see it, right? Is like going inner church. I just move with refined purpose. Then more so than the days that I don't, because I am choosing to be busier,
Right.
and making these excuses of, oh, but like I really can't. I don't. 5 minutes is not enough time. Well, then if you can't find the 5 minutes, carve out the time in the moment to really be present of writing this email, and or being in conversation with somebody, or at a stoplight, instead of reading signs, which I caught myself doing on my drive from the Southern California.
Yes.
I read every sign, which is like a lot of things that I don't need in my head. Be present to watch how a child who's crossing the street where their mom is looking up and kind of giddy and joyful about being guided across the street, holding their parent's hand. That's a moment that I get to witness of love between a kid and a parent.
Yes.
Or a homeless person who is carrying everything in a suitcase, in a backpack, and the tent that they've pitched at the corner of a really busy LA street and Pacific Coast Highway, and acknowledging that they exist, and wishing them joy in that day. Or having $5 ready for the homeless person in Oakland at my stop sign, and being able to give it to them and say, God bless you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Finding ways to be present, finding ways to live inside our own worlds. I know that there are some people who who are not in politics, who are not decision makers, want to be in the know. And I so appreciate that and understand that there's a space for that. I want to be touching the life that I can actually impact. And we donate, and we'll play an ad a little bit later on where we are encouraging other people to donate for a project overseas. So it's not that we are only navel gazing. However, I really appreciate what you're saying about being prepared for what's around you. I have a friend who, as she's going through her clothing, will put things together in packages to be able to give people to hand out the window, to tell them God bless you, and to share with them different things. And again, that space of just acknowledging and being aware of the world that we live inside of, and that some people may choose that life, but not necessarily everybody is in that space of going, oh, this is where I want to be and how I want to be.
Right.
So being mindful of that as well. I will share that I was a couple that was picking up recycling cans, and that I had a $5 bill, and that I gave it to this couple, and they looked at me very, very quizzically, like, why would you be doing this? And that I felt it a little bit like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this. But yet spirit was just so clear about do this. And I thought, so I did. And so inside of that to go, wait, there's no shame.
Yeah.
This is just, I'm seeing, I'm sharing, and maybe it's being received well, and maybe it is a question mark on the other person's side. That's okay. That's okay. It's that listening to the inner voice, trusting, developing that relationship through, in my words, action. So hearing the voice, and then making the decision to have the action that goes along with that.
Yeah.
As well. So in this space, we're going to take just a quick commercial break for the Mama Lynn Sewing Project. Here it is.
Do you wonder if you can actually make a difference in a war-torn country half a world away? One man has decided a difference can be made. The Mama Lynn Center in Central Congo gives women who have been ravaged by war a chance at a new life. Women and their families, including husbands, come to learn how to move forward. The women are taught sewing skills to be able to create an income. At the end of their year-long training, each graduate receives a sewing machine. This is where your support dramatically impacts lives. $150 US provides a new hand-operated sewing machine. Here's the link and QR code to join Sarah and Michael Stockham in positively changing futures through the Mama Lynn Sewing Machine Project. We are grateful for the opportunity to share how you can make a significant difference.
And as we are coming back and sharing these ideas and concepts and thoughts about how we remember those who've already transitioned before us, about choosing to live a life of faith, about listening internally and making the decision to have action with that. I love that you mentioned Reiki along with meditation, because for me, the two of those just go so closely hand in hand. What have been some of your ahas about Reiki as you have been learning over the last several years?
So I'm new to Reiki. I've only a year.
Okay.
A little over a year. But what I realized after going through my training is I've been doing a component, like my own version of Reiki, I guess is how I have seen it. What I really, really love is the ability to go through time and space where there is no time and space, to send that love and light to anything and everything. Recently, somebody walked me through the crystal grid that you learn, and blessing the crystals down to when it was still growing in earth. And I hadn't really thought about that. And when I did that, I was like, wow, that's important. Like that's, so many times we're like, oh yeah, be grounded. What does that mean? Okay, good. Like feel my feet on the ground, but like really understanding the inherent connection that we have to Gaia. And, also when my experience with Reiki is it amplifies the reality that we are all connected. And by all, I really mean heaven and earth. And the body that is the conduit for this understanding and this energy, in the moment that it's practicing Reiki, is really balanced in that knowledge, and then is able to be the vessel that radiates what needs to go where it needs to go. That resonates with me with Reiki and meditation, because I feel that that's also how I have learned to approach meditation.
Mm-hmm. I think the component for me also that when I first was introduced to Reiki and first learned was that component also of space and time.
Yeah.
It was just living under this is how things are.
Yeah, we operate like that, right? We're taught to operate like that until we
yes
don't have to.
And I understand that there still is space and time that I continue. I look at my calendar, that's going to be time, right? And as I travel places, that's space. But I really do believe that there is an action that we can take where we are able to go back in time or forward in time, to be able to leave these energetic gifts of beauty and of space and of love and light and calm. And if the person that, say I'm given a name and somebody says, please send Reiki to this person, there are lots of different philosophies about this. But I finally came to the point that I thought, and realized for myself, and Spirit confirmed this for me, that I'm sending Reiki no matter what. You're fine. I'm sending Reiki no matter what, because if that person doesn't receive it, the people around absolutely will receive. that there are people around who want that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that bell ringing was just a confirmation that what I was sharing is accurate. Yes, no, it's all good. It's all good. But that is that confirmation of saying this is important. This is the listen up also with that. As we are finishing our conversation, Donna, are there things that you'd like to reiterate or new things that you'd like to share?
So along the lines of sending Reiki through time and space and reconciling experiences that may have been painful or hurtful with people who've passed in my life, I go back to that experience with them and I send that experience and I send that part of me that misunderstood, as well as the part of them that was hurt or was misunderstood. If I hurt them, I send them Reiki. I send that experience Reiki. And the act of doing that has been so helpful in forgiving, being forgiven, asking for forgiveness and forgiving. And so, anyone new to Reiki or anyone who has been practicing Reiki a long time, there's that opportunity always to heal anything and everything. And it's just, it's an understanding and it's a humility that has allowed me to receive that gift in particular, is to understand what I don't know and to just really be present in the moment of learning and understanding Reiki deeper for myself, that I was like, oh, I can do that too. Why not? Try it. And, that's a lot of life as well. It's something that's applicable outside of Reiki. And I mean, if you can say outside of Reiki, I feel like it's energy that's flowing all the time. So that's what I would like to include.
That is so beautiful. I absolutely love, Donna, that you share that this has helped you in that road of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
For me, forgiveness is about living in this particular time, in this particular day, making decisions not based on hurt, not based on trying to hold somebody else to a standard, but based on me making the best decision in this space that I can for right now. And that comes full circle back to you sharing in the beginning of our conversation about listening to that internal voice. Because if I'm going to hold up a list and be, doing the check boxes all day long, that's one way of living.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I'm in that space, I'm not in a space of being able to hear the still quiet voice because I'm so busy checking off boxes. And so to be in that space of being able to say, I'm going to put the clipboard down. I'm going to live today.
Mm-hmm.
And in living today, I'm going to receive energy. I'm going to receive beauty. I'm going to see these things around me, knowing that I'm cared for and that I'm loved for by this cosmic being, this beautiful birther, creator who cares so deeply, I believe, for each of us.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time, Donna, for sharing critical points in your life and the things that you've learned out of that. It has expanded my life. We talk about the word appreciation and we think about things that appreciate, like when you buy a house or a condo and it appreciates in value, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that concepts also applies to people, that we see them growing. And I have such deep appreciation for you that you've shared and taken the time to do this with the Simply Sarah audience and with me. So thank you so much, friend.
Thank you too. It really helps me.
Beautiful. Well, until next time, friend, thank you so much. And I'm just so glad that we had the opportunity to share things and if there are things that you have questions about, know that you can always reach out and that we will be answering those questions or taking them into consideration as we do other shows. But we are so grateful that you each are taking the time to listen.